So today we're doing a talk all about the passion of pursuit in relationships and in intimacy. And this is based predominantly in my book, The Divine Union of the Masculine Feminine. And this is one of the most important dynamics to actually keep the spark alive in relationships. It's the one thing that keeps the fires burning. And it's interesting because it is predominantly the role of the masculine partner. Now, if you've watched some of the previous videos, we go into which polarity you prefer in relationship. Do you prefer the masculine or the feminine? And this isn't about gender. This applies to heterosexual, same-sex couples, all couples. If you desire that romantic, passionate experience, not everybody does. Some people truly desire the joy of a comfortable friend. And there is nothing wrong with that. To have a home where you simply have someone there you love and you can relax. And maybe once in a while, something happens, but you don't need all the romance and the dynamic passion and all that. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with enjoying that. And then in those cases, you don't really need to polarize. You don't need to actually know who is empowered by being in the masculine and who is expanded by being in the feminine. But if you're in that kind of relationship or you desire that kind of relationship, it is the energy of the person who prefers the masculine who is the hunter. It is the one who does the pursuing. And it's meant to be imbalanced like that. Because what we're doing, if you look at the Yinyang symbol here, the wonderful artist Gina Murray who painted this, I asked her if she could create a three-dimensional, dynamic yin-yang symbol that seemed to be in movement, that the masculine was always moving into the feminine and vice versa. This is the power, this is the energy of pursuit. So if you imagine, so the white is normally the yang or the masculine, and the feminine is the dark, the black. So what's happening here, if we want to have that excitement, when you get really excited about something, it could be anything. Maybe you're going to a concert, right? And you start talking about it, like, do you think we could go? Do you think it's even possible? I don't know. Could we get someone to watch the kids? Do we have enough money? Is it even, is this feasible? So this excitement starts to build. And then it's like, yes, and the excitement gets bigger. And you buy the tickets and the excitement gets bigger. And then you get on the road and you travel to the place and the excitement gets bigger. And then you're standing in line and then you get into the venue and it keeps getting bigger and bigger until they finally get on stage and you look at your friend and you go, can you believe we're actually here? This is so exciting, right? This is the passion of pursuit. This is the excitement that's possible in relationship. And this is where that masculine is always pursuing the feminine, and it gets up and it gets higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. And that is what's possible, not only in the relationship where both people feel the fun of this dance. It's fun. It's fun to be pursued, and it's exciting to pursue, right? If you desire that. Not everybody does. I prefer the feminine polarity in relationships, not in life. In life, I'm super masculine. That's why I'm here teaching live on YouTube. That's why I love writing books. That's why I love teaching courses. I love being in the masculine role. I also love being in the feminine role in other ways. But in relationships, that's my place to expand in the feminine. So I don't really have a lot of desire to pursue. All that being said, in the masculine feminine continuum, and again, we talk about this a lot more in other videos, there is a continuum. It isn't 100% on the one person. For me, for example, I might prefer to be in the feminine 90% of the time, but 10% of the time, I do take the initiative and I do pursue and I do make sure he feels loved and desired, and I completely take him on a journey. Right? But if that was my job all the time, we'd start to have issues, because that really isn't my desire, and it isn't his either. If he wasn't doing the pursuing, there's a reason, and there's a lot of reasons for that. I'd like to read a story to you from my book, because it really speaks to why this is so important and what happens when this doesn't exist. So this is in chapter 14, The Passion of Pursuit. My friend was in a super passionate relationship. Her partner would come home and make dinner, and they would dance in the kitchen. They would have amazing sex and talk long into the night. It was everything she ever wanted. Then, bit by bit, that started to disappear. He began to play more video games and didn't want to sit and chat as much. Things became very comfortable, easy, and relaxed. And besides a little sex before sleep, he never seemed to want to do anything with her anymore. So she bought sexy lingerie. She planned fun things for them to do. When that didn't work, she assumed that maybe she had done or said something wrong, and spent serious time looking inwards. Then she became very busy with life and financial issues and let her concerns about their relationship sit on the back burner. After a couple of years, she asked him what happened. It just feels like you don't put in any effort anymore, like you don't care, like you're not attracted to me. He just looked at her point blank and said, "Why run to catch a bus you've already caught?" And this is the most challenging part of this pursuit dynamic in relationships, even though it's perhaps the most important dynamic in our intimate relationships. Because this is the model most of us have seen for our whole life, right? Maybe our parents or their parents or whatever, their parents had a classic relationship. There wasn't a lot of passion or spark in it. There wasn't excitement. We weren't watching our dad take our moms out for date nights once a week. We weren't watching our dads, light candles and do fun things. And I don't mean showing intimate things, but we weren't seeing that perpetual pursuit. We weren't seeing flowers coming home and being put on the table. We didn't see that, right? And again, I'm just talking about my own mother and father in a heterosexual way, but it could be anything. If you have same-sex parents, it could be watching one partner always coming home and wanting to do something a little bit special for their partner, just to make them know that they're really desired, And there's something powerful about that. Imagine how different our conversation would be right now if we had witnessed that growing up. That this was normal. This is how our parents kept the love alive. This is how how they remained friends, how they remained passionate. It's like you're walking into the kitchen, oh, they're kissing again, because they wanted to be, because they were still romantic partners, not just business partners in the business of family and life and making money and sharing rent. So that's one of our greatest challenges, is that we haven't seen it, right? If we had seen it, we would expect nothing else. If we were in a relationship, we would expect that, yeah, of course. Of course I plan things. Of course I buy flowers. Of course I give massages. Of course I plan, that's normal. But that hasn't been normal. And in fact, because one of the big challenges in this masculine feminine dynamic is that historically the dynamic is switched, because we lived in this domination paradigm where the masculine ruled the feminine, it oppressed the feminine. So in a heterosexual marriage, for example, the masculine partner, actually in same-sex couples too, whoever takes that masculine role will often oppress the feminine. And the feminine partner, because it's kind of like I mean, this is seeming really extreme to say in a marriage, but that oppressive dynamic is like the tyrant king. A benevolent king cares for their people, or a benevolent queen cares for their people. That masculine energy nurtures those in their charge. They protect them. They make sure their crops are watered. They make sure that there's markets for them to sell their wares. They care. This is the true feminine, or the true masculine. But we've been raised in this domination paradigm where we have a tyrant king or a tyrant queen as the masculine, in which case the people serve the king. The people pay taxes endlessly with nothing in return. The people must make the king or queen feel good about themselves or whatever, right? And in many ways, this has happened in our intimate relationships as well. What we witnessed was our mothers, perhaps not in all of our situations, but we watched our mothers running circles around our fathers or our fathers' families or whatever. This is like serious clan behavior in many, many, many societies where the women are they have to serve the husband and the husband's family. Huge deal. So now all of a sudden we're seeing actually the person theoretically in the feminine role pursuing the masculine. And this is one of the weird things about the pursuit dynamic. All the other dynamics easily go back and forth. In the giving and receiving dynamic, both people can equally give and receive. In life especially, but even in relationships, it's not that big a deal. It's still important to polarize, but it's not that big a deal to switch every so often when you want to. Structure and chaos, right? If someone's having a hard day, the other person will naturally rise and become the structure that helps them explore those emotions and helps them see that all the way through. No big deal. But in pursuit, the reverse doesn't normally work. Again, like I said earlier, every so often in a healthy relationship, yeah, the person in the feminine is going to switch polarity and they're going to plan a beautiful evening for their partner, maybe on their birthday or maybe just because they love them and they think it's fun to do and they feel inspired. But when there's trouble in the relationship, maybe the relationship has gone stagnant, maybe something has happened, and maybe someone's lost a job or there's illness in the family or simply the spark has gone out of the relationship. The only person who can fix it is the masculine. The masculine actually has to start pursuing again, assuming there's not deeper things going on. But let's just say the spark has gone out. If the person who is normally in the feminine polarity tries to pursue the masculine partner, what happens? They go further away. They withdraw. In the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, which is hilarious how today it's it's so heteronormative, we can barely take it seriously. And yet, it still is true in this masculine feminine dynamic. If the person who is naturally in the feminine, who likes to be in the feminine, pursues the masculine, in his book, he talks about how when the man, and we'll just use his terms, when the man goes into his cave, you cannot get him out. The more you pursue him, the deeper he's going to go into that cave, and the harder it's going to be to get him. Reverse pursuit doesn't work when something's amok. Unfortunately, that person in the masculine has to do their own work. They have to figure out why they're withdrawing. And it's a great challenge because especially historically in our world, and I'm going to use the men as an example, but I often see this in lesbian couples where the person who loves being in the masculine withdraws in the same way that men have historically. It's the same energy because they often And again, this is a really broad brush, but just if we look at it as a pattern as opposed to an individual situation, they don't as easily talk to friends about issues. I've never had a partner in my life, married or not, who had buddies that when on a bad day, he'd go and talk to his friends. Oh, I'm really having a hard time. Katrina and I were having trouble communicating, and sex is weird since the kids came. And I've never met anyone like that who prefers the masculine polarity. I have male friends who are gay who prefer the feminine, and they're very chatty. And they often have many female friends who they love to talk about things with. But I've never met anyone. So it makes a lot of sense that they tend to withdraw, right? Because there's all kinds of unresolved issues and they don't know how to talk about it. And of course, one of the things about this dynamic and one of the journeys that we have to take at this time of life is that we have to find that balance within first. And I really believe, which is why I'm doing all these live videos, I really believe that finding this dynamic inside of us so that we can have it in relationships, this is really at the growth edge of humanity. This isn't easy and it's new because historically the separation we felt between the masculine and feminine in relationships, in family, in the clan, in society, it's all within us too. So for example, many men, and I'm just going to use men as an example here, struggle to actually connect with their feminine side. And I don't mean to become feminine like. I mean accessing their true feelings. The benefit, and one of the reasons, is because of this domination paradigm. We believe that the feminine is weak. And if I start accessing my feelings, well, then, that means I'm just going to be crying all the time and I'm going to be super emotional. It's like, no, women aren't supposed to be like that either. They've just become that way because of this masculine oppression. All of us, all genders, when we are connected with the feminine within us, that's the power and the confidence to step forward and do the things we want to do. Connecting with our feelings creates oh shoot, I had a word there. When you dig deep and you know something is true and you step forward and you manifest it. So you connect with the feeling and then you step forward in the masculine and you do the thing. That's what gives you the confidence and knowing that this is true, right? Whatever that word is, it's going to come to me. But this is really important. So for a lot of men, but it isn't just men, it's women too, who were taught that you have to be strong, you can't be weak, don't pay attention to your emotions, don't cry, be stronger than that. That is the beginning of the journey. Because of course, what happens when things go wrong in relationship? We do the same thing in the relationship that we do within ourselves. We run away from the emotions, we run away from the difficulty. And the challenge is the feminine is truth. It is what is. It's kind of like if you imagine the masculine is energy or the divine energy or Shiva Shakti or however you want to understand that. This is the energy of life. When it manifests on earth, this is the feminine. So what that means is however you're feeling in this moment is what is. It's the truth. But of course, we've been taught to avoid that as well. Well, make it different. I don't want to feel like that. I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be sad. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be like that. So we oppress it again. And maybe we take a drug or we drink something or we go shopping or we do something to try to change how we feel because we don't like how we feel. We don't like the feminine truth. This is such a big deal. It's so important because especially in this land of pursuit For example, I'm going to sort of jump ahead a little. In the land of pursuit, you are pursuing the feminine, whether it's the feminine partner, the feminine within, whatever it is, the feminine inspiration, but you are pursuing it. And what that means is the feminine has to be true to self. And if in that moment your partner does not actually desire sexual intimacy or does not desire attention of any kind, that's reality. That's the feminine. It's not being difficult. It's not even rejection. It's just truth, right? It's just the way it is. And this is a huge deal in the journey of pursuit. To understand that when we pursue someone and they respectfully say, not right now, it isn't a personal rejection. They are simply checking in and saying, that's not my truth right now. That's not in line with where I am right now. When we pursue the mysterious feminine in our partner, that is always possible. But we've been trained that, well, so you don't love me? So you're not attracted to me? Like, what's wrong with me? Why don't you like me? Why don't you want to have sex with me? Why don't you want to be with me? Why don't you want to do these things? I went to all this effort and I did the thing. I pursued you. And now you just say no? But this is how we were taught, that this is normal. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One, Hollywood has done just a number on us. Because in Hollywood, there's the pretty people and the ugly people. And it's very distinct, right? I mean, when you think of, I always feel sorry for actors who are always, they're signed up for the fat character that no one wants, or the ugly character, or the ugly sister, or whatever. And you're always like, these stereotypes are what make this rejection so strong. Because the hard thing is, it has nothing to do with truth. In life, the pretty people are not necessarily the people you want to be with anyway. They may not resonate with you on any count. They may look really pretty, like in a Cosmopolitan magazine or a GQ magazine, but that has nothing to do with whether you laugh together, whether they are wonderful lovers, whether you love traveling with them, whether you look at them and they get this sparkle in their eye and you're just head over heels with them. Hollywood teaches us to fetishize other people. Oh, there's this, I want to read you one other quote in this book. This is from, it's from the book, The Beauty Myth by Naomi Wolf. And I read this randomly one day when I was in Greece. The family I was staying with, they were having a big fight. And so I was hiding in one of the bedrooms, kind of giving them space. That's what happens when you travel and you live with families all the time. And they had this book, they had the book, The Beauty Myth. And I just happened to open it up randomly and I read this passage. When men, and it's about women, right, and men, when men are more aroused by symbols of sexuality than by the sexuality of women themselves, they are fetishists. Fetishism treats a part as if it were the whole. Men who choose a lover based on her beauty alone are treating the woman as a fetish. That is, treating a part of her, her visual image, not even her skin, as if it were her sexual self. This is a really big deal because oftentimes we will go after someone because they look like Angelina Jolie, Christy Brinkley, whoever our hero was, or whoever Hollywood has trained our brains to believe is attractive. We're not even checking in with whether we can feel them in our heart, We're not checking in as to whether or not there's any dynamic magnetism between us. We're not checking in at all. We are simply running from a program that was put in our brains that this is attractive. And so then Hollywood says, well, those people, they get anyone they want. The pretty person always gets the one that they want. So that gets into our heads. So then all of a sudden we go out and we pursue someone. And if they say no, what's the natural response? Well, it's because I'm not attractive. It's because they don't like me. Because I'm not Brad Pitt. I'm not Christy Brinkley. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not good looking enough. I'm not successful enough. Because we've been trained that the successful people get the girl, that the pretty girls get the guy, or whatever. I mean, obviously, I'm just doing Hollywood heteronormative things here, right? That's what we've been trained. It's not true, right? And the problem is, say, for example, this fetishizing certain things. We'll end up going after people. It's like, they say in corporate America that a man who is tall will be hired on in management positions way before their shorter counterpart. This has nothing to do with their ability to lead, their interpersonal skills, their intelligence. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's all just been put into our minds. Imagine instead that Hollywood always made short men, because short men, again, in this, it's kind of like being a overweight woman or a woman with no breasts or whatever. We've been taught to fetishize certain aspects of the human body. None of it has anything to do with the person, their ability to do the job, their capacity for being a great lover. None of this. It has nothing to do with anything. And it's interesting because it's trained us to believe that uniqueness or even aging, that this is now unattractive. Years ago, well, I still teach belly dance, but I used to do a lot of belly dancing. And it was really interesting because every so often I would go to Toronto to the big conferences, the big belly dance conferences. And there were people there who danced in the Arab nightclubs in Toronto. I never did that. I was never that good. But it was really interesting. And they would often have discussion roundtables about that experience. And especially the older women who had been doing it for many, many years, and many who lived in the Arabic countries where there was a lot of belly dancing. Historically, the most beautiful belly dancers were women who had a lot of flesh on their bodies because their bodies moved, seemed like they just moved. There was more flesh to move. There was more, and then what happened, and this was normal. So if you went into a club, you would have no idea what the belly dancer looked like. And it didn't necessarily mean that a slim belly dancer wasn't beautiful, but the slim belly dancer might look like many, many, many things. She may have many beautiful permutations and combinations of her body, but there was no singular vision of beauty. And what would happen is, of course, you would sit and you would watch, and you would get drawn in by the beauty of the dance. You would get drawn in by her movements, by the story her body was telling. You would get drawn in by her merging with the live musicians that were playing the drums and doing what they were doing, and she was dancing with the musicians, and you would be spellbound by the experience. But what the dancer looked like was not the point. And then Hollywood got a hold of belly dancing. And belly dancers suddenly became 18-year-old looking, whether they were or not, slim, large-breasted, olive-skinned women with long, straight black hair. And there would be troops of these women dancing. But this is always what you had to look like. If you didn't have the hair, you wore a wig. If you were too heavy, you didn't get on the troupe. If you didn't have big enough boobs, you got a boob job. You had to look like this to now be a belly dancer. And what these women were telling us, these belly dancers of old, they said the hard thing is this vision now got into the eyes of the men watching, and even of the women watching. Who are we kidding? But it got into the eyes of the people in the clubs. And unless you looked like that, they didn't want to watch you. Oh, well, isn't she old? Isn't she fat? Oh, she has no breasts. She has no bum. I don't want to watch that. They weren't watching the dance anymore. They weren't feeling the energy. They weren't feeling the energy of the person. And so this is a huge challenge in pursuit, especially in the dating world, more in the dating world, obviously. Maybe not. Maybe even in relationships. Most people who love each other in relationships, they just love each other. They don't notice body changes or anything else. I think with, in the men that have loved me, I could gain or lose 50 pounds in the course of a relationship 100 times, and I'm not sure they even notice. But there are relationships who do fetishize each other. They have to be skinny, they have to be strong, they have to be whatever, or else I'm not attracted to that. Understand that many times there's more than that going on. If we become depressed, if we become withdrawn, if we're actually going through something, we may actually, that's what we actually are unattracted to. It's not the body, but that's a whole other discussion. So that's a huge part, especially if you desire to be the one in pursuit, to be very clear that you're pursuing someone where there is a magnetic attraction from both people. You're not just magnetically attracted to them, because we have to be careful. It could just be a fetish in our mind that was planted there by Hollywood, right? Am I actually feeling this person? Not am I horny? Horniness follows the fetish, right? And porn and Instagram models and everything else, right? We're kind of inundated with it today. But am I actually noticing that this person's attracted to me too, right? Are their eyes, you can see, like, if someone's eyes dilate, the pupils dilate, it's a sign of attraction. Are we noticing that in this person? Are we noticing that they're attracted too? And if they are, continue the pursuit. But if they're not, it just isn't there, right? Maybe they're not available. Maybe they have whatever, or maybe it's just not the right match. But the thing is, this fear of pursuit is such a big deal. And we have to just somehow rephrase that, or I've lost the word. But we need to I keep saying reformat in my head, but that's not the word. But we need to recontextualize what happens there. It's like, well, I went out, it's kind of like a hunter. If you go out to hunt something, for the tribe or whatever, right? Sometimes you don't find anything. Sometimes you come back empty-handed. But it doesn't mean you don't go out again. It just means that, well, that's normal. That's part of the thrill of the hunt. If you go into, it's kind of like fishing. You can go into a stocked pond and be guaranteed that you'll always get 6 fish that are exactly this size, perfect. Not a lot of thrill of the hunt there, right? Not a lot of excitement, not a lot of the strengthening of the masculine Shiva power inside. Whereas if you go out into a natural lake and you fish and you actually catch something exciting, now that's exciting, right? So it's an interesting thing in the land of pursuit that getting a no doesn't have to end the thrill of the pursuit. It just means that it's no right now. And it's interesting for people who are on the receiving end of pursuit. I remember being at a Tantra festival and then talking about how important it is for you to have a no. Because Tantra festivals can be huge live dating apps. Because sometimes people have read about Tantra or Tantric intimacy, and they kind of want to explore certain things with people, but it's hard to find those people out in the world at bars or on dating apps or even amongst friends who maybe might be wanting longer term relationships and that kind of thing. So there tends to be oh, this is a place where people are like me and they're interested in the things I'm looking for. So there tends to be a lot of, looking around and pursuit going on. But what they taught was make sure you have a no. Make sure you have a strong no. And this includes even if you're in long term relationships. Because if you don't have a strong no, then your yeses mean nothing. If you always say yes because you're afraid of hurting their feelings, or, well, they did go to all this trouble, so I'd better at least give them a little bit, and well, then it means nothing anymore. And the pursuit becomes no fun for the person being pursued because you don't have the freedom to say yes or no. You have now lost your connection to your feminine, and eventually you start resenting them and you don't want to be pursued anymore. And they're trying to pursue and it's not working and they don't understand what they've done wrong. But what they've done, it isn't about them. It's about us because we didn't say no when that was our truth. So this journey of pursuit in a relationship is really an interesting journey. And it's really important to communicate this with each other, to kind of say, it isn't you. I'm just really tired right now. Or my mind is really chewing on this thing with a friend of mine, or this thing happened at work and I can't get my head out of it. And maybe the person who wants to pursue says, well, is there anything else I could do? Like, would you like a massage? Like no strings attached, or can I run you a bath and read you poetry or something? Is there something else that would really help? And maybe they say, actually, I think I just need to be alone for a little while. Or maybe they say, you know what? I'd actually just love to go for a walk, clear my mind, and you can come with me, right? There's lots of options, but the key, again, this is growth edge of humanity. We don't have any role models, you know? Even in Hollywood and stuff, which unfortunately is where we get the most of our patterning from, besides our own parents, which again didn't really have great role models. The one pursuing is like relentless, pursuing the person that doesn't like them and blah, 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 blah. Like it's like we don't have a lot of good patterns here. So it's really important that we all open up communication, whether we're dating, whether we're in relationship, to actually say, I really want to pursue you. I don't really know how to. Like what are some good ways that you would really love? And maybe and then you can say, I love this, I love that. Then it's up to them to do it and to desire it and play with it. But it just becomes something very light and fun. So the last thing I want to mention is, what does this look like in intimacy, in sexual intimacy? The key here is, first, it's initiating intimacy. That's the beginning of the pursuit. Now, anyone can initiate intimacy. And there's kind of three ways that it can go. Let's say the feminine partner initiates intimacy. Maybe this is one of the situations where the feminine partner is going to take the masculine lead and they're going to see it through to the end. And they are going to be in the masculine right to the end, and they're going to tell their partner, you just lay there and I'm going to have my way with you. Right? And the male partners, that I'm saying male because I have a heterosexual brain, but the masculine partner now is going on a journey of receiving. They are going on a journey of connecting with their feminine and their chaos, and they're actually getting to explore that, which is super fun. So maybe that's one option if the normally feminine partner initiates. Sometimes what happens is the feminine partner initiates to kind of just give them an idea that actually now is a good time. Like, how about now? And they kind of start fooling around. And then the masculine partner's like, awesome. And then they flip polarity kind of during foreplay. And then the masculine partner continues this beautiful energy. But the one thing I want to say about that is that one of the challenges with that is we have to be clear that if we do initiate, it's possible that we do have to see it through. Because, there have been lots of times in my life where I've initiated. I didn't actually have the energy, or I didn't actually want to be in the masculine the whole time, but I kind of wanted to make love and I wanted them to be in the masculine. But oftentimes they didn't initiate because they actually weren't in that mood either. They actually weren't in the place where they wanted to initiate and be in the masculine. Maybe they were tired. Maybe they were thinking about things. Could they hang out in the feminine and just receive? Yeah, maybe they'd have the energy for that. But they didn't want to initiate. And in those instances, I'm initiating, I'm doing all this stuff, but I'm kind of in my heart waiting for them to switch, and they don't. And I remember being quite disappointed. I don't really do that anymore, but I've been very disappointed lying there going, like, come on, like, it's like you're not even here. And they kind of looked at me like, but you started it, right? And this is the interesting dynamic. It's kind of that you can't pursue someone who's naturally in the masculine if they don't actually want to be there, right? It's a thing. And that's why one of the challenges with this pursuit thing is people often say, well, I'm allowed to initiate, or I'm allowed to pursue them, or I'm allowed to do anything. It's like, well, just be clear then, especially in dating. If you pursue someone and you want to be in the feminine, maybe you're laying out a golden carpet for them to step into their masculine because they're afraid of rejection or something. Maybe that'll happen. But more often than not, if you pursue and you make all the plans and everything, what you're doing is setting the precedent for the whole relationship, right? They're showing you that they are more than happy to be passive and you can be in control, which isn't really masculine feminine, right? But you are now simply serving them. You are simply making all the plans and you're falling into the patterns of our parents, right? And that's okay if that's what you want. But let's say back to intimacy. When the masculine actually pursues, initiates, and starts that ball rolling, this is the divine energy coming in and entering the divine energy of Earth. Like, both are divine, both are powerful, but they're different. So now you imagine this feminine entity and this lightning of energy flowing in, and it's endless. That's the key, that once you initiate, you keep the ball rolling. You keep this cycling. You keep it going and you let it expand and get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Because the exciting thing about pursuit, and especially pursuing the feminine, is the feminine is eternally mysterious, right? It's eternally unknown. Even if you've been with this person for 40 years, they are not the same as the last time you were with them. They are different. They are a different person than the last time you were with them, right? So what you're doing in intimacy even is you're staying awake. You're not doing the same thing you always did. You are paying attention and you are reading them. And maybe you have inspiration and maybe intuitively you think, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do this. And you are on an adventure pursuing and going into the unknown. This keeps you very alive as the masculine partner. Can you imagine feeling so alive that you just never know what's around the next corner? And around the next corner could be super sexy. It could be deep, intimate sex, like deep tantric sex. It could be napping. It could be having a conversation. It could be tears. It could be anything. But there is something so exciting and empowering about navigating that true mysterious land. That is keeping that pursuit happening all the time. And that being said, in tantric intimacy, and when I mean tantric intimacy, as opposed to, say, procreative intimacy, not necessarily that you want to have a baby, but in procreative intimacy, the point is to kind of rub together, have some pleasure, move up to an orgasm, and ejaculate, right? Both sexes, doesn't matter. That's the goal, and then you're done. Then you're finished, right? In tantric intimacy, the desire is to connect. and you release all outcome. You release the outcomes of orgasm or ejaculation or any of that thing, and something bigger happens, something much bigger than just a little orgasm, right? So what happens is you tend to make love for much longer. You tend to make love for, let's say like the procreative thing, maybe is like 10 minutes or 20 minutes or something. You may find yourself half an hour, 2 hours in. And what happens is the energy is like a sine wave. You can't just keep going up and up and up and up and up for 2 hours. So you pursue like crazy and it's super exciting. And then all of a sudden the energy starts to kind of wane. And you'll feel it in the feminine partner particularly. And you kind of like almost rest together and you just sort of flow. And then all of a sudden something in the masculine partner it's going to come back. And even their vajra, the penis, if it's a man, will often wane and come back and go in and go back, and it'll keep going up and down, which is completely fine because you're not just having sex for 10 minutes. You're actually making love perhaps for hours. So even the pursuit doesn't have to be manic for the whole time. You can allow it to flow with the natural sine wave of life. And the feminine also can flow with the natural sine wave of whatever they're feeling. And this is really, really important. So I'm going to look at your questions. And if you have more questions, I would love to hear them. Do you think that the passive is an energy that many people reside in? Yes. And to understand that passive isn't feminine. Feminine is, I want to say, actively receiving. It's almost like if I'm passive, I kind of have my arms across my chest like this, and I'm just not engaging. I'm just in the back seat. I'm going along with whatever you want. I'm just whatever. Receiving, feminine receiving, is opening your arms and saying, oh, yes. Yes, I want this. Yes. That's very, very different than being passive. Why do I think they reside in the passive? I think it's a lot of judgment. And the judgment that comes from other people causes us to judge ourselves. And then when we judge ourselves, we're really afraid of connecting with others. And so we shut down because we don't want to connect with other people. Sorry. Right? So that passivity becomes, well, I'm just sort of going to roll up into a ball and I'm going to float down the river, and I can't get in any trouble because I haven't done anything. Right? So, right? There's a fear of not getting in trouble. So thank you guys so much. This has been wonderful. And we're doing this every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Toronto time, if you want to join again. And if you have any ideas that you would like to have, definitely, or that you'd like me to talk about, just share those ideas in the chat or in the comments underneath the actual video. And then I can schedule them, because I would love to do talks about whatever you guys would like us to talk about, because that's where it gets interesting and juicy. Even if it's really focused, a very specific question, those are sometimes the best talks. So thanks so much. Hey, Martha and Tammy. So glad you're here. Awesome. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.